Well, look, congratulations on the film. I guess it must feel a little bit strange talking about it, though, after last week's news.
It's been really sad, but also at the same time, I know Helen, and I know how for her, she would have wanted us to celebrate her life. You know, Helen had such an extraordinary life, and she fought very hard for that life. Yeah. And I really think that what I found amazing about her story is that she was somebody with such a clear goal, a destiny that she believed in, but in the end, she made decisions about her independence and freedom as a woman.
I heard that her death was announced in the States during the debate between Biden and Trump. Is that right?
Yes.
How do you think she would have felt about that?
I think, well, you know, and I think I got photos also in Australia where people were watching the debate, and the subtitle underneath the whole debate was about Helen Reddy passing away. And I think that Helen would have been incredibly amused that on the night where you have two men arguing, that she somehow managed to disrupt this conversation, and she, you know, and you know, instead of being left with this memory of, you know, somebody shouting at it, you know, one man shouting at another, that night, so many people went and listened to a feminist anthem. You know, she started to trend, you know, in the top 40 again because people were listening to I Am Woman. I just love that. I think there's an incredible irony to that.
Yeah, I think she would have loved the idea that she completely upstaged them actually on the night.
Yes, and got everybody to start listening to the words of a feminist anthem.
Yeah. So how did the idea come about making a film about Helen? What appealed to you about her particular story?
Well, initially I met her by chance, and when I met her at this dinner, I swapped seats with my husband because I really wanted to, you know, I'm a naturally curious person, but also for me, when I think of Helen Reddy, it reminds me of growing up as a young child in Australia and how I always equated her music with women becoming stronger and bolder. I always tell the story of how I used to sit in the back seat of my parents' Volvo, you know, yellow Volvo station wagon in the 70s, and her music used to come on, and my mother and her friend used to wind down the window. And, you know, they're incredibly intelligent, vibrant women who are mostly homemakers and mothers at that stage. That was what was expected of them. But suddenly the music used to come on and they used to wind down the window and they'd let their hair loose in the breeze, and I'd watch them transform. And so when I first started speaking with Helen, I was interested in, you know, not just her career, but this sort of period of time in the 70s and what the changes that women were going through as well. Of course, along the way, I learned so much. Like, you know, I have 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's degree, and I had no idea some of the things that had happened to women that came before me. I didn't know that you could only have a credit card in your husband's name. And that's not that long ago, that you couldn't be an individual with your own name on a credit card. So I learned so much about what happened in the women's movement in the 70s, and especially with what happened with the second wave of feminism and the fact that the Equal Rights Amendment was never passed, and there's no pure gender equality in the US Constitution, which, you know, has come to light even more right now with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, as you know, with the Virginia military case that she so eloquently debated and won, it put into law gender equality. But, you know, law can always be superseded, but something in the Constitution cannot be changed, and that still has not been done. So I learned so much, not just about what had happened to women and the women's movement, but I was also amazed about the scope and the depth and the breadth of Helen's career. I think growing up in Australia at a time when there wasn't social media and the media in Australia were not that kind to Helen. They always felt that somehow, because she'd given up her American citizenship, that she was too good for Australia. But that in itself is so sexist, because it was mostly men who were journalists who were writing at that time, and she only gave up her American citizenship because her children were on American passports and she needed to be able to travel with them. And, you know, you couldn't have a dual citizenship at that time. It's sort of really interesting how things are skewed and people don't think about, you know, what you have to do as a working mother.
So how did Helen feel about having a film made about her, and how involved did she get in the making of the film?
Well, you know, Helen was not, you know, Helen is very, one of the things I love about her, and I'll always remember, is she's very blunt, she's very to the point. So Helen does what, you know, she does things in her own way. And so when we first started talking about it, I think that she was concerned because it's very scary to give away your life rights to a filmmaker, somebody that you don't know that well. And you don't have a lot of control over the final movie in some ways. But we spoke for about a year before we really decided to make it into a fictional film rather than a documentary. And I do remember when we finally came to that decision, I said to Helen, I'm not going to make a documentary. I'm not going to get everything right. I'm not going to get every word right. But what I promise you is I will absolutely honor the spirit of who you are, what your life has been, and the impact that your career and your music has had on people. And I think that that's what she really valued.
So what do you think her appeal was as a singer? I mean, apart from that amazing voice, which was so clear, there must have been more to it than just that.
Well, I think she totally broke the mold for women. She did so many things that she was told she couldn't do. She came to America, she couldn't get that recording contract. She didn't quite fit the mold. She wasn't the typical female entertainer of that time, you know, and she also, once she got a #1 hit with I Don't Know How to Love Him, she then wanted to sing songs that women typically didn't want to sing. And she then went and wrote words to a song that meant something to her. And I think that women, and not just women, people in general, and I've had so many fans tell me over the years what both Helen and the song have meant to them. And so much is about the fact that they could identify with her, and that if they didn't quite fit the mold in their high school or in their family or in their town, you know, somebody like Helen really gave them hope and inspiration, because she was able to do it without being all the things that were expected of her.
So do you think this is going to revive an interest in her music?
Well, it already has, because when we opened in Australia, we very quickly were trending #1 as the film in Australia.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is that for the first time, there was a grandmother and a granddaughter who had 2 songs in the top 40 in Australia. So Helen revived I Am Woman. That very quickly hit the top 40. And our original song in the movie is sung by her granddaughter, Lily Donat. And Revolution also hit the top 40. So it was the first time that I thought that was pretty cool, that a grandmother and a granddaughter were in the top 40 at the same time. I think Helen loved that. And
I think she would have loved that too, definitely.
Yes, and I think that, you know, I was in London just before we all shut down. I actually came to London. I was speaking at the International Women's Day breakfast, hosted by Sarah Brown, and it was for, it's hosted every year for Their World. And it's interesting because I was talking, I was one of the keynote speakers then, and just even mentioning the words of I Am Woman, lots of young women in the room came up to me and said to me, I can't wait to see the film. I'd never heard of these words before. And of course, there were women who already knew the song, but I think what I really loved is the way young women have embraced this movie, and the way that young women have reached out and told me how they didn't know what had come before them, and how they watch a film like this and feel inspired and empowered.
extraordinary how that song has such longevity. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great to talk to you, and thank you very much for the film as well.
Yeah, and it has longevity because it's honest and it comes from somebody's true experience, I think. That's what all great art is, don't you think?
That's true. That's true. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.